Campus Relations team at Campus Labs, and I'm joined today by Dr. Will Miller, who's one of our Assistant Vice Presidents for Campus Adoption. So I'll let Will introduce himself further in a moment, but our Campus Adoption team exists in order to help our member institutions to make best use of the tools that they're going to utilize from Campus Labs. So there's a lot of things that all of our different tools are capable of, and a lot of different. Every school has a slightly different process and that you're trying to model. And so his team really takes the time to kind of listen to how your process works on campus, and then how to best utilize our tools to kind of fit that process or to improve that process. And Will is well suited for that role because he actually came to us from a campus where he was a user of the Campus Labs tools, including this course evaluation platform that we're going to talk about today. So before I turn it over to him, I just wanted to mention I was very excited when Crystal reached out initially to set up this demonstration. I'm not sure how many of you in the room are aware, but Gonzaga has been a partner to Campus Labs since 2006. So at that time, the Division of Student Affairs under Sue Weitz's leadership was kind of an early adopter of our tools for managing the student affairs and co-curricular assessment process. So I joined Campus Labs in 2009, and Gonzaga was one of the first campuses that I had the opportunity to work with. So you kind of have a special place in my heart as a result of that. And I worked with some of your folks in student activities and some of your student leaders back in 2013 to bring to campus our student engagement suite, student engagement tool called Collegiate Link. Some of you may be familiar with that. It's actually now referred to as Engage, but the idea is that it helps you to manage and promote and track and assess student involvement in the co-curriculum, student engagement, clubs and organizations, and all sorts of kind of outside of the classroom opportunities. So those are two things that you are currently already doing with Campus Labs. And I believe it was 2015 or 2016, the campus also extended the assessment suite for academic affairs use. And I don't know how much that's happening today, but you do have the ability to use our assessment suite to do some student learning outcomes assessment and to assess the impact of learning in the curriculum as well as out of the curriculum. So this, we have a rich history of working together, and I feel like this conversation about course evaluations is really kind of a natural extension of that partnership and of the assessment and evaluation efforts that are currently happening on your campus with Campus Labs. So hopefully that gives you some assurance that you would be partnering with a kind of a trusted partner, and you would also experience some benefits in terms of contracting and technical setup, which would be easier since you've already done some work with us. And perhaps most importantly, you'd gain the opportunity to have kind of all of this data stored in one place and therefore accessible for purposes of connecting data across the institution and doing some analytics. And so in addition to the specific functionality of the course evaluation platform that Will's just about to talk about, he's also going to show you some of the additional benefits of being able to access all of this data in one place. And some of the analytics capabilities that grow out of the interconnectedness of these tools. So with that, I'm going to let Will kind of take it from here and maybe introduce himself a little further, and then jump into what you're here to see.
Awesome. Thanks, Jill. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, thank you.
Perfect. Just as a forewarning, I am in an airport, so if you hear kind of a booming voice over my head calling for people, don't worry, I'm in a good spot, but I'm waiting for a flight. So as Jill said, my name is Will Miller. I've been with Campus Labs for a little bit over a year now, and prior to that, I was at Flagler College in St. Augustine, Florida. I was Vice President of Institutional Analytics, Effectiveness, and Planning, and oversaw the course evaluation efforts there using the Campus Labs tool, and was also a faculty member in political science who was being evaluated by students using the Campus Labs tools. So it's really an area that I feel strongly about and have a lot to kind of offer in terms of our discussion. As I go through what we have to show today, go ahead and make sure and stop me whenever you have questions. So Crystal, if anybody ever has anything they want to ask, I'd rather you just stop while we're on the slide so we can kind of talk about it while it's fresh for everybody and work through any questions that way. As Jill mentioned, Campus Labs is a larger platform that really aims to help bring data points together for campuses. And we really focus on the 5 areas you're seeing here today. One being improvement and accountability, which is on the academic assessment, student affairs assessment side of the house. One being teaching and learning, which is where we're really spending a lot of our time today talking about course evaluations. One being early alerts, location check-ins, the pieces of retention and student success, and one being the student engagement piece where you've been partnering with us, as Jill mentioned, for a while now, looking at things like organizational memberships, looking at co-curricular opportunities and those pieces. And then lastly, the middle bubble, the analytics and insight tool set that sits atop the entire system that I'll talk about towards the end, which Jill kind of alluded to as being the place where we can really start to help you connect your data, where we can bring in the data that's coming from what you're doing in terms of surveys and rubrics and course evaluations, and then data from your student information system related to student demographics, and being able to look at things like course grades and map out differences there. So a lot to kind of demonstrate there. And from the Campus Labs perspective, we really see every institution as having what we call an untapped data institutional ecosystem, with the idea being that this isn't higher education 15 or 20 years ago, where there wasn't data on campus. There were actual data holes that we didn't know what we needed to fill it with. And instead, today we see the problem as being there's data everywhere, but it lives in silos. So the faculty have data on students. We know that enrollment management has data on students. Student affairs has data on students. The business office has data on students. Data being available is not the problem. What we're missing today is a way to actually connect these data points together. So the idea being, from a faculty standpoint, course evaluation results are great. It gives me a sense of how the semester went, how the year went, maybe some strengths, maybe some weaknesses. But if I can get down into further levels and layers of that data by making these connections, I can all of a sudden start to see things like, how do I look with students that get A's in my classes versus students that are failing my classes? Am I seeing differences in evaluations? How do I look for students that are majors taking my class as part of their major versus students that are non-majors taking it as part of a general education curriculum? Being able to get to a lower level that will give me more actionable information that I can then use to, again, hopefully improve my personal pedagogy, improve my academic programs, and ultimately get students to a point where they're hopefully destined to be as successful as possible at Gonzaga. So our approach is to help take you from having just individual data points living in silos to information, and then ultimately to actionable insights that we can actually do something based upon that will improve what our faculty are doing, what our students are doing, and the data points that are available for offices like institutional effectiveness and institutional research that are looking to help us answer maybe complex questions in ways we just can't today. So speaking of the teaching and learning side, obviously we're here to focus, and we start with just a kind of a brief theoretical view of how we look at course evaluations and then get into the actual product. So we start with the idea of when we go to most campuses and ask, why do we conduct end-of-term evaluations? We hear from a lot of faculty that they're doing end-of-term evaluations because they have to. They don't necessarily view it as something where they're going to gain data back that's going to help them, that's going to be useful, that's going to inform their teaching. They see it as more contractual responsibility and something they need when promotion and tenure rolls around. But ultimately, we know that if course evaluations are being conducted in a way that engages students and allows faculty to have some impact on what's being asked and how it's shaping what they want to do in their classrooms and with their students, that we can get to a place where they buy in a way that makes the entire process more meaningful. Obviously, the historical way on most campuses is a paper and pencil course evaluation system. For you all, it's obviously the legacy-built system that you've been operating on your own campus, administered by your own folks for a number of years. But obviously, the school I came from, we moved from a homegrown system just like that to the Campus Lab system. And part of it was because each year, faculty were asking for more and more in terms of reporting. They wanted to see things slightly differently. For us, we were worried because the guy who had coded our program had Delphi coding background, and there were only like 20 of them left in the country. So we knew it was just a matter of time before he left, and nobody would be able to come in and kind of build off of what he had. So we really try to push for you a better way of doing course evaluations, which emphasizes the things I'm going to talk about as we go through the presentation today. And really the first part of that is making sure that we recognize that the center of the Campus Labs course evaluation tool is the ability to have multiple customizable instruments. and being able to customize questions based on different areas. So we normally work on the assumption with most campuses like yours that you have kind of a set of core questions. So you have an evaluation instrument today that you're using. And from what it sounds like in Jill's conversation with the group, you seem satisfied with it today, but there might be interest in looking at it in the future. But the idea is we start with a set of core questions that are shared across campus in some way, shape, or form. And then we allow for easy customization through custom questions based on potentially the org chart, based on potentially attributes of particular courses, based on potentially individual faculty going into their sections and being able to add an additional question or two. And again, if I think an on-campus example for me, when I was at Flagler, we had custom questions for me as a faculty. We had questions that were tied to political science. So all the political science courses got 2 or 3 questions about integrating current events, looking at global views, things like that. We would also potentially have questions that were tied to, is this class part of a learning community? Is this class online delivered? Is this class offered by an adjunct? What are we looking for in terms of different attributes of that class that we can identify through the system so that those questions are automatically added to those course evaluations each semester, and it's not anybody's responsibility to manually go in and do that. And obviously we'll talk about how we get the data towards the end as well, but once we have the data and we have those tags set up, it's seamlessly doing that for us. And then lastly, the ability to add custom questions as a faculty member is always helpful because, if I was teaching an intro to political theory course and assigned 10 books, I may want to ask students about 3 or 4 of the books specifically and say, this is the first time I have ever used Antigone in this class. Do you feel like it worked, yes or no? Should I use it in future semesters? You'd be disappointed if I didn't reuse this book. Whatever the question might be, it gives me questions at that point where it's extremely personal to what I'm doing in the classroom. It's personal to my pedagogy. It's personal to my teaching beliefs. It's personal to what I'm trying to reach students with. So I'm more likely to buy into the process as a whole as well. And in this, you can see just how easy it is to build these survey tools. So you have the benefit, as Jill mentioned with my team, there is a complete support team that you have full access to for the life of the contract. So when it comes to course evaluations, this is something where setting up that core instrument, we can actually just build it out for you so it's there. But if you need to build your own instruments, if you need faculty to add their own questions, whatever it might be, the ability to actually develop this inside of the site is pretty straightforward. So if you've used Baseline, which Gonzaga has access to, this will look very familiar because it's the same survey building capabilities, but being able to determine whether you want single select, drop downs, multiple selections, text box of different sizes, multiple text box. If you want to use a matrix like you see on the screen to kind of make it seem like fewer questions because they're using the same answer choices, or if you just want to add instructions, it's up to you and it's a point and click interface. You can add as many pages as you want. You don't need to be concerned with how it's structured. You'll have the ability to customize that as part of the design phase. And then obviously, as we talk about custom questions and different ways of looking at this, we always make sure that there is a screen that will allow for an evaluation preview to ensure quality evaluations by being able to see for each section what questions are going to be there, how are they going to be coded, how many answers are required, how many answers are allowed, so you know that before the evaluations launch, that they're going to look the way you want to be asking the questions you want of a particular course section. Any questions so far? Just kind of the big picture of building an evaluation or the ability to kind of add some of those custom pieces?
Can you change the order? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Can you do it?
We have a question in regards to how the students respond. Can you change the order from 1? Okay.
Yep, the scaling can be changed. Yeah, that's controllable by you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's it.
Perfect. One of the things I know Jill had emailed you about, we actually do offer this service at no charge. We could do this for you today. We just need your actual evaluation instrument. We have a data science team that runs text analytics on your course evaluation and then actually gives you an idea of what the co-occurrence of different themes are, what they look like benchmarked compared to what we sort of deem national averages from those that have taken us up on this, the ability to look topically and at subtopics at what the evaluation is actually asking. And what's really nice about doing this on a campus setting is it removes the personal from the discussion of what's good and bad about our course evaluation. This is, again, a text analytics program kind of producing this, so it's no longer Will is saying, as the IE director, that we spend too much time talking about the students on the eval and not enough time talking about the course as a whole or about how it's assessed. It's the analytics program suggesting that. So this is just something where, as you think about your current instrument and things that you might like to alter or change, this is something that we could run for you whenever you want it. Again, whether you go forward or not, we can absolutely produce a nice little 3 or 4 page report that gives you a sense of what your evaluation today is looking at. In that same vein, I know you're happy with your instrument today, but I'd be remiss to not mention that Campus Labs is the official online partner for the Idea Center, which has a nationally normed, the only nationally normed course evaluation instrument that they've built over their 40 years as a nonprofit and with Kansas State University that really attempts to track student learning by looking at students' perceptions of their own progress on particular learning outcomes, matched with what faculty were hoping students would do in terms of growth on those same types of learning outcomes. So again, that's just there to kind of plan in the back of your mind that if you're ever looking for a new instrument or a different way, that this is an option that's out there with us. So at this point, I'm really going to talk through 4 different experiences. The faculty experience, the student experience, the dean/chair/administrator experience, and then the experience for the individual who's in charge of making all of this magic happen. So kind of a system administrator and some of the tech pieces. And we'll start with the faculty. So for the faculty, they would be able to log on to a faculty experience page. So it'd be gonzaga.campuslabs.com/faculty. And we would have available for them a listing of all of their courses. It would show when the evaluations were going to open, what the response rates were if they were in session at that point. And it's also where they would go at the end to see their results when results were available. And it will include things like response rates, enrolled students, all of those pieces. We also have the ability, and this is a campus culture discussion piece, for individual faculty to see which students have and haven't responded to an evaluation. That can be turned on or off based on sort of what you are comfortable with and whether you would want faculty to have access to that or not. But just so you know, that feature is available. You can't match responses to students in any way, but you could at least see who are the students who haven't done the eval yet. With faculty experience there, like I said, depending on what tools you're using with Campus Labs, you have different things available. For you all today, depending on where the baseline license lies and how it's being used, rubrics could show up, the student response system could show up. The feedback tool we'll talk about shortly will show up. So there will be some features of having that all housed in one place for faculty. Faculty have access through our system to trends analysis reporting. So as you use the Campus Labs toolset, we longitudinally track faculty results, and this is available to just the faculty members, and it may be useful for them as they think about promotion and tenure, it may be useful as they think about annual reporting, it may be useful as they think about their own pedagogy in a lot of ways. So in this case, you're seeing for 3 course evaluation questions, the responses over 4 semesters to those questions. And if you click in to any individual one, it's going to show you that question, each course you've taught that's had that question associated with it, and then it's going to put this light blue bar that's going to show your overall mean as a faculty member for those questions. So the goal is it becomes easy to kind of see where's my average, where am I higher, where am I lower, what did I do differently? I can see fluctuations between the same class. It opens up lots of doors so we can actually see in one place what's happening longitudinally instead of having to skip back and forth between different semester by semester course. And if you click on any bar, it's going to show you what the course was, what the course mean was, how many respondents, the enrollment, and then let you get into that summary report. So again, a longitudinal view for faculty. But obviously, we want to see the nuts and bolts as well as faculty. So faculty have 2 ways of accessing their reports in a more traditional format. The first tier is what we call our summary report, where it takes all of the sections you taught in a given semester and puts them in one report where you can see kind of the raw data responses. So you can see, here's the question, there's section A, section B, section C, and I can see how the answers maybe vary across. So in this case, I might note that section B looks considerably lower in terms of my averages here versus sections A and C. And as a faculty member, I may want to think about, what was different about section B versus the other 2? Was it something about the class? Was it class timing? Did I act differently? But it gives you that opportunity to see it in one view. And then ultimately, you can also see any individual course section as well as the faculty member. So you can see your raw data output in this type of report format by section. And that includes the quantitative, qualitative. So I know that you mentioned students who are part of this process. Whatever students type into open text box fields will be viewable to faculty here. In terms of protecting student anonymity, the ordering of the comments will differ every time the faculty member logs in to see, so we don't even have to worry about, I know I was the first student to do it, and so does the faculty member, so they're probably assuming that the first comment is mine. We don't even want that to be a concern for students when we think about privacy rights here, so that's meant to cover that. This report is by far my favorite report in the Campus Labs Course Eval Suite, and it is one that we'd have to talk about again, a faculty culture piece, but it's called our segment comparison report. And what this allows you to do is look at any individual question or statement on your course evaluation, and you see your average for this particular section is the blue dot and the blue bars, and then the purple dot or the purple bars are going to show you either your average compared to all courses at Gonzaga, all courses in your academic program at Gonzaga, or if there are more than 3 sections of the same course offered, your section compared to all sections of that same course that were offered that semester. So if I was teaching Intro to American Government, I could see my average for a section of Intro to American Government compared to all Gonzaga classes, all political science classes, or all of the sections of American Government in aggregate. And we set it at 3 because if there's fewer than 3 between your average and the group average, you would be able to tell the average of another faculty member directly, and we don't want this to be used for faculty versus faculty. This is meant much more for, you know, if I'm the blue dot here, I'm looking and I'm saying, oh, I'm doing better than average on helping students see that they can organize their ideas and information. And if I'm the purple dot looking, I might be thinking, oh, I might want to talk about, you know, how I could get higher on this particular question. So it's really geared to help faculty not just see themselves in isolation, but see how their averages look compared to other groups, which provides a little more meaning and context to what we're looking at. Any questions on those report examples or what they look like?
Yeah, we have one question. 1 second.
How has this?
Yeah, no problem.
How has this report data maybe influenced faculty relationships with, for example, faculty counterparts or the relationship with the chair or department head? Does this information has it become used for like review of performance or what in terms of comparison with people across borders and more an individualized experience?
So
yeah, no. So I can.
Could you hear all that? Oh, perfect. Even
yeah,
better.
I heard, yep, I heard it. Yep. You don't have to translate that one. No, I'll give you a perfect example. So the campus I came from, we were non-tenure granting. Every faculty member was on year-to-year contracts. So the question you're raising was of supreme importance to faculty there. And the real goal behind this type of report for us was faculty, as part of their annual reports, were able to identify areas on their own where maybe they realized they're a little lower than the average, and they were able to actually say, here are some concrete plans I have for how I might improve it. Or they're able to say, these are things I don't worry about. So for example, I pedagogically was not a fan of group work. So when I would see that I was well below the bar on group work, I would kind of state in my reports, you know, I'm below the bar on group work, but I don't pedagogically believe in it. Here's what I do to have an active classroom environment instead of group work. The goal, again, it's a culture thing, and that's part of what we offer. It's not just the tech support, but being able to work with you all on strategies and tactics to make it so that data like this isn't used by a dean or chair for simply you're 0.2 points below the mean, and that's horrible, so you need professional development. We want this to be a tool that faculty are using that encourage them to reach out to other faculty and say, gosh, I'm low on this consistently. What are you guys doing? What's that? How are you assessing it? What are you doing on this particular course eval question that's leading to me being lower, so you can start to figure out what's happening below just the numbers.
Thank you.
No problem. When reports are available, emailed automatically. So when we set up the administration, we're able to say that reports will be available to faculty on a given day and time, but we can set an email that automatically triggers them to log in. They log in back to their faculty experience page. There are all their course evaluation results available for them to see what it looks like for the semester. With us, reports are available 24 hours after the administration ends. So if the administration ends Friday at midnight, and let's say grades are due Wednesday at noon, you can have this set to go out Wednesday at 12:01. And we really try to make that as timely as possible so faculty have the best opportunity to actually make use of their evaluation results between semesters instead of, when I would get results back in mid-January, end of January for fall semester, I may be reteaching the same course and I'm saying, there's good information here, but I can't change midstream now. I'm already back in the classroom reteaching that same course, to really try to make sure we're timely with that. I mentioned the real-time feedback tool, and I think this is another piece on the pedagogical side that really comes into play. This is something that teaching and learning centers love. This is something that engages faculty and engages students. I do want to be clear on this particular tool, since I know that students are a key component of your decision, and you might have some there too. This is intentionally designed to not be confidential or anonymous. This will identify students. And this is a formative feedback tool that faculty can use as often as they choose throughout a semester. And it asks students on 6 specific questions that can't be altered how they feel the instructor did on that particular day. So as you can see, it's things like the instructor displayed a personal interest in you and your learning. The instructor found ways to do different things. The instructor made it clear how each topic fit into the course. And when the faculty member clicks start on this, it's open for 3 hours after the class period. Or you could open it during the class period, obviously. And at the end of the 3 hours, it emails the faculty a report automatically that kind of summarizes the day's results and shows them a screen very close to this. How many students responded? How many students understood the material covered today? So the last question on this is, I understood the material covered today, yes or no? And then where did I rate on that scroll bar with students on average for the 6 questions? And then you can also see below, it is not anonymous. It's telling you who the student is and where they rated you. And the goal of this process is that if you use it enough, we can get to reports that look like this, and we can start to identify students that are struggling. So it's a way for students to say, I didn't get today's material. And you're able to kind of see if you try different things or approach material different ways, what happens over time, because you can isolate individual course days. You can also isolate individual students and sort of see where they fall. As a faculty member, I loved the tool. It was a culture piece where I had to be very clear with students on what I was doing, why I was doing it, how I was making use of this data, so they understood that this was for their benefit. But it was also something where if I looked and saw that in a class of 30, 18 students didn't understand the material I covered on Monday, on Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm going back over that same material because there's a large enough portion of the group that I would risk leaving behind if I moved forward. So it was a way to really have a pulse of the classroom at a regular interval. And again, this is entirely faculty controlled. This data here lives with the faculty. Deans and chairs aren't seeing it. It's there for the faculty to use to hopefully help students be able to be successful in our courses. Any questions on that tool or thoughts?
I want to say Max just posted a question in the chat box.
Yep, I saw that too.
Okay.
And Max, I'll answer that when we get into the very last part in terms of the raw data. It's a depends answer based on something else I have to show you. So obviously we talked about students. We showed kind of the faculty portion in terms of the reports they have access to in the tools. For students, our goal here is to reach students where they are. And obviously that means in class, in the lab at home, in the student lounge, in the quad at the library, to make it as easy as possible for them to complete their evaluations. We also have best practices on response rates, on assuring that, with a different online system, that response rates don't become problematic or concerning, that we can keep those elevated. And I can tell you at Flagler, we had our response rates, typically an average semester was about 75% of all evaluations were completed. And that started with tactics like making sure that faculty were still offering some class time with a captured audience, making sure that we were timing when we send email reminders. We learned at Flagler early on that sending email reminders Monday at 8 a.m. was meaningless. Most students weren't Monday morning at 8 a.m. thinking about doing their evals, they were thinking about class. And that once we started sending reminders at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, when students were typically not in class, we had a better chance of them sort of being at their computer or not having something else in their mind so they'd complete it. So we really want to make this as easy as possible for students. Part of that streamlining, again, being able to send emails to students letting them know evaluations are open, also sending reminder emails to students reminding them that they need to complete evaluations. How our system works, you can pre-schedule all of your reminders and emails, but in terms of reminders, immediately before the email goes out, it's going to check and see which students have completed all of their evaluations, and it's going to automatically remove them from being reminded over and over and over again that evaluations are open. So for students, they'd go to the gonzaga.campuslabs.com/course evaluations. They'd authenticate in using their Gonzaga login information. And when they open, they would see, if they're on a regular computer screen, they'd see the left. If they were on their cell phone or a smaller screen, they'd see the right. It would show them their courses. It would show them when the evaluations were due. It would show them if they needed to continue, where they left off, if they needed to start, if they needed to start. It also shows them at the bottom evals that are coming down the road. And they also have a tab where they can see evals that they'd previously submitted and were now in closed administrations. So the students are always going to log in and then be able to see all of those courses that have open evaluations at that point. And I'll talk about how we get the data in here towards the end as well, so we can be sure to cover that. If students, so for example, in the second class, this Principles of Biology 1, it has been started, it auto-saves, so as the student fills out the evaluation, it's auto-saving their answers. If that student doesn't go back and finish that evaluation, let's say they only answered 2 questions, on August 31st at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time, it's going to submit that eval with just those 2 questions completed, so we at least get the data they had originally set out to put in. It's meant to be an easy-to-navigate survey experience, so again, you can see the computer screen on the left, the cell phone mobile base on the right. Again, the idea here on matrix questions, these matrix questions on a cell phone are difficult. You have to scroll left and right. You have to remember the statement, all of those fun things. We build it out more of a scaffolding matrix on this point where the answer choices stay the same, but you can see the statements clearly and just, again, design it to be as easy to use as possible compared to making you try to figure out how to make this larger block fit on your screen of a mobile device. Questions about the student interface. Again, the students will have it emailed. We can do connections to LMSs for this, but the important part to note is that students will all log into that gonzaga.campuslabs.com/course evaluations to get there. And if you want to shorten it to make it easier for them, a lot of schools use a redirect. So at Flagler, for example, it was flagler.edu/eval, and that took students to the flagler.campuslabs.com/course evaluation. Because that was just a simpler one for faculty to remember and share in the classroom.
I have a question, kind of. So we administer baseline and for campus. So the whole building, the survey and everything looks identical to building a baseline survey, as you mentioned. So we're also familiar with the mass mailing system in baseline. It sounds like this connects to the banner data of what students are enrolled in and what courses they're enrolled in, right? So is that similar to the mass mailing system where it only sends reminders to students who have not yet participated? Or how does the mailing automatically go out?
Yep, no, that's true. So just so you know, it is a different mass mailing system than baseline, and I'll be able to show it to you here shortly. But it is that same logic of the only students who are going to get reminders are students who have not completed all of their evaluations in that administration. Once if the first day a student completes all of their evaluations, that is the last email they will get from us for the length of that course evaluation session.
Thank you.
No problem. So for the administrators, thinking about, again, when we say administrators here, we're thinking chairs, deans, program coordinators, whoever may need to see the results from multiple faculty. We have some reports set up especially for them to try to make it easier than just having to shuffle through every single faculty member's every single evaluation. To start, obviously, the deans and administrators do have the ability to go faculty by faculty if they choose. They will be able to, as you can see here, log in. This is the dean of the business school, and he would be able to see all of the business faculty. And he could then click on a course report or a summary report for any of his faculty members, and it would show him the same summary report the faculty member would see. So there's the numerical kind of raw data piece, and there it is with the comments built in. But we try to make it a little bit easier for them as well. And the way we try to make it easier for them is to do what we call the question mean analysis report. And with the question mean analysis report, the dean of the business school, the program coordinator, the department chair, whoever would have these permissions, can see the average results for their unit on all of the course evaluation questions. And then most importantly, and I don't have the screen up right now, I could pull it up if we need to. When they click on that number 22 where it shows the number of courses that question's covered in, it's going to pull up a screen for the chair, the dean, the coordinator, that's going to list out in bar charts where all of their course sections and their org units for that semester fell. And they can then click on one of those bars, and it's going to give them at the bottom a list as a dean or administrator of the faculty in the sections that scored in those particular bars. So let's say you have a question on your course evaluation about whether students agree that the instructor is an excellent teacher. It's a very generic, easy one. And the dean clicks on it and says, okay, I had 22 sections, and now I see a bar chart that says 8 of my sections were between a 0 and a 1 or a 1 and a 2 on the instructor was an excellent instructor. So in this case, let's say that was a negative thing. You wanted to be higher than that. When they click on that 1 to 2 bar, it's going to show them at the bottom a list of the faculty in the course sections where that low rating came. So it will help deans, coordinators, and chairs be able to spend their time looking at, the areas they really want to focus on. So it's geared towards helping them kind of focus in on potential areas of weakness or potential areas of strength, as opposed to having to discern that themselves by reading through countless course evaluation reports. And then we also have an in-depth response rate report. And with this, being able to look and see within your program where response rates are at different points in the process, so you get a sense of, all my evals coming at once, are they balanced across the board? What does that look like? Any questions on those kind of administrative reports? I mean, the goal there, again, is giving them the ability to see the granular level if they want, but also giving them the ability to see big picture and kind of fine-tune what they want to spend and focus their energy and time on.
I think we're good. Thank you.
No problem. Then last we have the administrator tools in terms of who's actually building the system and making this kind of work through. So what's it look like for the administrator? So this is kind of the administration's management homepage. A lot of what you see on the bottom here is information that, as you mentioned, we will be pulling from Banner through a data feed. So that will include things like users. That will include things like courses and sections and attributes. And making sure that our org tree is mapped in a meaningful way. All of that will come from Banner. We'll talk about that process right at the very end. I would just so you know that comes through an auto data feed. It's not something we're manually doing all of the time. We're going to mirror your institutional structure. We're going to work and spend probably a significant amount of time at the beginning setting up the org chart to make sure it reflects what's happening on campus and allows us to assign users and administrators to the appropriate roles and places so that they can see the reports that they need to see without having access to things that they couldn't be. So example, when you think about the org unit here, what the org tree allows us to do is 2 things. First, we can set it so the business school could add questions to all business school courses if they chose. We could also make it through this that the business school, the person who has a administrator role at the business school can see all of the faculty in accounting, economics, and finance. So that org tree will be very important as we sort of build it out. We also do have the ability for some distributed controls. So if instead of having one system administrator who oversees everything for Gonzaga, you instead wanted to see it so that different individuals in different colleges kind of control the administration, we can accommodate that. That's something we'd want to talk about in more depth in terms of the pros and cons, but it's something that is available as a feature. Setting up the administrations is straightforward, so we can try to make it. You would go to create your administration. You'd pick what org unit. So if you're doing it for everybody, you'd do it for everybody. You'd pick what parts of a term you were looking at. So if you had an intersession, it was just for the intersession, you could do that. And then you can filter course sections. So I know, for example, you mentioned you want to be able to control administrations even potentially by CRN. You could actually pick individual course sections that you want to include in a certain administration through this process. And that course list is going to populate from Banner. So again, you're not going to have to manually be entering in courses or anything, but we can do it a couple of different ways. Then you'd pick the actual evaluation instrument, name the administration, decide whether you want faculty to be able to add their own custom questions or not. And again, being clear on the customization, faculty will never have the ability to remove a question that has been assigned by a department or program or the main instrument. They can simply add their own additionals and then schedule your dates. When do I want it to start? When do I want it to end? When do I want instructors to see their reports? When do I want administrators to see their reports? And recognize that once you've started this, you can go back and edit any of these dates appropriately. So, you know, if it's today and you decide, gosh, we're not ready for course evals to go, we would need to wait till Friday, you can change that at that point. Once it's opened, you can't change the start date, but you can still change when it ends. You can still change when instructors and administrators can see their reports. So you still have full customization options throughout the process. And then administrators, as sessions are live, are going to be able to see a bunch of different information in boxes here. So they'll be able to see what's current, what's scheduled, what's past, what are the response rates, how many sections, how many days do we have left, what does that look like? And if they look at a past administration, you'll be able to see things like I think I have some focals on each of these, things like the administration details. So you can start with what term, what org unit, what were the dates, when were the reports available, what were the response rates, so how many students responded, how many were possibly going to respond, what's that look like. From a mailing perspective, you can see what mailings you had scheduled and completed, how many students got each, and to show kind of the data. So from the student side, 48 students were notified that this evaluation period was open. 4 days later, 27 got a reminder, so 21 had done all of their evals. 3 days later, 23 got a reminder, so only 4 students completed between reminder 1 and reminder 2. So that's kind of showing you that breakdown that it allows for that component. And then you're also able to see course sections. So for a system administrator, and again, this is only a system administrator, they can see course sections, how many students are enrolled, what's the response rate, and if they click on details, they will see a list of the students, and it will put a check mark next to students that have completed the evaluation. So they can't see those students' results, they can't match the results to a student, but they can at least see which students have and haven't completed what's going on there. Any questions on that kind of administrative part, or Jill, even on your end, anything from the course evaluation side you want me to touch on that maybe I haven't at this point?
I'm going to let the group, see if the group have any questions first.
And I will still talk about the data transfer part here in a little bit, so don't worry if that's the big question, is how this all comes from Banner.
If there's one student who filled in the evaluation and it's marked that one student filled it in, then you're going to be able to see that one student, right? If only one person did it in the beginning when you're
the faculty member would not be able to see that it was that one student unless you had it turned on for individual course faculty to see who has and hasn't completed, which is why most institutions don't have that ability for individual faculty to know who those students are for that exact reason.
okay, thank you.
Jill, anything on your end?
Nope, I think you're hitting all the high points.
Perfect. So we mentioned the idea of the ability to really bring your data points together. Because again, the goal here is we have the course evaluation data at this point, but we also have information from baseline, we have information from Engage, we'll have student information system data, so the ability to really empower change through visualizing data, you get some new opportunities with course evaluations. And just to give you a sense of the types of things are possible through our Insight platform, we can start by looking at things like if you provide us midterm grades, we can see things like midterm grade breakdowns. Nothing really surprising there. But most importantly, we could start to track things like midterm grades versus final grades. So now all of a sudden with this type of data for English 101, if I'm teaching English 101, I have the ability to sit with a student and say, if you have a D at the midterm, so I'm in the blue bar, some students got to a C, some stayed at a D, some stayed to an F, but nobody got to a B or an A. So that D grade is meaningful at midterms. If I see a student who is an F at midterm, the red bar, most of them stayed at an F. Some got to a D. Nobody got to a successful A, B, or C grade maybe. If I'm a student that has an A at midterms, most students kept an A, some students on this other purple bar fall to a B. It informs that decision and starts to bring that data together. But even more importantly, we can tie that in with additional data points we now have access to. So again, we can slice it by different cohorts and years as well. But this is where we get into the CE benefit here. Is through Insight, we can start to look at things like, let's say we have a course evaluation question that's measuring instructor responsiveness and one that looks at course rigor. And we want to look at how different courses have responses to that based on how many credit hours they're. So I could create visualizations that show me what a 1 credit hour course looks like versus a 3 or a 4 credit hour course in response to these. Do we see differences based on the amount of time? If I'm a dean, I can all of a sudden have dashboards that show me all of my departments or programs on these types of questions. If I am a faculty member or a program coordinator or a department chair, I could look at all of my courses on particular questions in one space, where I can kind of see where things are strong or weak. And again, the goal here is not for this to be done in some type of punitive, we're going to find weak spots, but to really identify areas for potential growth and areas where we could better serve students inside of our classrooms to make sure that they're likely to be successful. So here, for example, course challenge ratings by year enrolled. So we can say for individual students, if you're a freshman, where do you see course challenge versus how seniors see the challenge of courses? And again, obviously, I think you're probably expecting that freshmen might be the high here, and as students get used to Gonzaga and what your expectations are, that this would drop. But this becomes available. And again, you can slice this by any type of data you want. You could also possibly envision, in terms of aggregate data like this, show me course evaluation ratings for students that got A's versus students who got F's in the courses they're evaluating. What role does higher grades play in how students rate faculty and what they're doing? Is that different by program? Show me my course evaluation results on particular questions for major students versus non-major students. So maybe is it that I'm teaching a political science course that I have non-political science students in, and they don't like me, but the political science students love me, so those results have different impacts for the long term. All of that becomes doable. And again, it's done in aggregate, so we're still protecting that individual student in this case. So that way we have the ability to really, again, parse into the data in ways that on average we don't today. We could look at things like course evaluation results by alerts raised if you were using our early alert system. We can look at excellent teacher and course excellence based on different types of measures of some kind. We could look at learning outcome achievement if you were using us for outcomes compared to what we see in terms of course evaluations. Again, you're not using us there today, but with baseline, you could bring over rubrics data and say, show me how students performed on some rubric versus how they responded to certain course eval questions, so I can see are high-performing students responding one way while lower-performing students aren't. And if that's happening, why is that gap occurring, and what can we do to help kind of mend what that gap looks like to assure that everybody's having an equal opportunity? And again, basic enrollment pieces, dashboarding capabilities that we can tie together SIS data with Engage data. And with Engage data, we could look at things like, show me course evaluation responses in courses based on how many organizations a student's a member of, how many events they've checked into. Do I see a difference between super involved students versus uninvolved students and how they're viewing faculty and course instruction over the course of the semester? And to Max's question, this also allows you the easiest way through Insight to mass pull all of the raw data out so that you can put it into a data warehouse of some kind if you chose to have that. Although with a lot of campuses, the relational database can actually function directly within Insight because we do all of the merging and all of the data cleaning for you. So it gives a point-and-click interface where you don't need to use code. You can share these visualizations out with faculty, staff, the general public. This is also a way that if you ever wanted to make this information available to students in an aggregated format, you could. Now, again, I'm not saying that you would make individual faculty evaluations available to students, but you could kind of show them programmatically maybe or by college what you're seeing in terms of numbers. And this type of dashboard would allow you to do that without the users ultimately being able to see which students are contributing in which way to this. Does that make sense from a big picture standpoint? This is the power of being able to tie everything together and to really go beyond just, here is my individual course evaluation for my course and here's what it tells me.
I have a question.
We have another question.
You may have said this, but mentioned that something about having all of the baseline data and this course eval data kind of in one place. Is there, can those two different software sort of applications, programs, whatever, marry up and kind of triangulate any information in a visual like this?
Yeah, they can. So today, just to be clear, baseline data comes over from rubrics. We're actively working on getting the survey data in. The difficulty with survey data is obviously every institution has a different number of surveys, different types, different questions, so we're figuring out how to pull the most meaningful part. But the ultimate goal of this site is so you can, and this feature is so you can triangulate data like that in as many ways as you possibly can. Because if you think about it, once we get the survey data in, you could all of a sudden say, show me for students who said they strongly disagree with something on a survey. Let's see their course eval results versus students who strongly agree. So is quality of instruction impacting what they're saying on satisfaction surveys later on during their time or something? That all becomes possible.
Can you pull in other external resources? So if you have rubrics from a different product instead of baseline?
So technically today we don't pull in from outside sources, but that is another one where, especially for episodic uploads, we are able to accommodate that. So for example, if it's something where the data was changing daily, we can't bring it in from the outside. But if you had NESI data, or if you had Noel Levitt's SSI data and you wanted to bring some of that into what you're seeing in Insight, we could help import that type of data in an episodic nature for sure.
We're thinking, so we have Blackboard for our LMS, and we also have Turnitin as a building block within Blackboard. And so some rubrics are within Turnitin as part of Blackboard, but that populates the grade center. So you'd mentioned that LMS connects with this as well as Banner.
And Jill, can you just remind me I'm blanking, the baseline license is academic affairs?
It's institutional.
Yes.
It's in student affairs. Oh, institution? Perfect.
Yep, student affairs and academics.
So with the institutional piece, what you'd be able to do is actually open, we could create an LTI that would put the Campus Labs rubrics tool as an option inside of the LMS. So that would allow faculty to use Campus Labs rubrics inside of the LMS the same way they might be using Blackboard rubrics today, which would then auto-feed that data over into Insight. Pulling in external rubric data, I would have to check with kind of our Insight guru to see where we are on that and what's possible, because we haven't had anybody really try that at this point. But it's definitely a discussion we can have.
And I think to build on what Will said, the question about connecting to outside data sources. We are, in fact, pulling in information from various data sources into this Insight tool, demographic information, for example, that might be coming across from Banner about, we talked about student grades and things like that that'll be coming in. And then also the course evaluation solution, we do have a Blackboard widget, so you can access the course evaluation. Students can access their course evaluations from, via Blackboard. So it's not a separate login. It's going to pass through from Blackboard once they're logged into Blackboard. So there are definitely points of integration there, but specifically on that rubric data, that's not something that we're doing at present. That makes sense.
Awesome. Well, just talk through some of the tech pieces. It's kind of another piece that I know people are always concerned with. So the Campus Labs Promise, you guys work with us today, so you know how we kind of work our consulting teams. You'll have a dedicated consultant team that will help with course evaluation the same way you get assistance and engage at baseline. And that support lasts the life of the contract. It is unlimited from a tech support standpoint. We offer both functional and technical support, so we are happy to assist with everything from which button do I push to do X to we want to create a culture on campus where students want to fill out these course evaluations. How can we do that? What are things other campuses have done? And in terms of the tech support itself, students, faculty, administrators, whoever have access to that tech support. So if a student's trying to log in and getting an error message and it's 5 o'clock, You have access to our tech team between 8 and 8 Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, or through email support tickets, online chat, any of our help center pieces. Again, our goal is to make sure that you are successful with doing this. In terms of the data feed, which I know is obviously always a pointed question on this, so how we work is we would create what we call our core data process with your student information system, where we would pull information on hopefully a nightly basis, and that would include account information, that would include courses, course sections, course tags. It might include, like I said, the tagged pieces if you have it inside of Banner that would let us know it's an online class or a lab class or whatever else you might want to use there. And then obviously your student enrollments and your faculty enrollments to make sure those rosters are accurate. And by doing it on a nightly basis, it makes sure your roster's up to date when evals start. And it also makes sure if you decide to use that formative feedback piece that becomes available. So we have a set data dictionary. The data remains yours. Your privacy data ownership is guaranteed. You're protected 24/7. We have federal standards in terms of our security, so you don't have to worry about anything happening to the data you're providing with us. And then ultimately, we're using that information to feed in to both course evaluation, and if you go the Insight route, obviously into Insight as well. And you'd be working with our tech team to work through that data library and some of those file formats to make sure everything's up and ready to go. Implementation-wise, it's a implementation with course evaluations, pretty straightforward. We do some discovery. While we're doing discovery, we'd start the tech implementation side. You all are already authenticated with Engage, so you wouldn't have to do that piece. And then we'd start working through priorities to make sure that everything was up and running and you were ready to go. Crystal, from what I understand, you guys are thinking about a fall launch for a new course evaluation system. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a potential go live date.
Yeah, and again, if that's one where we have lots of time for that. I mean, that's not a scary date for me by any means. I have seen campuses with course evaluation be up and running in 2 weeks and well into starting training. It just depends on how quick we get that data piece set up and running. Then in terms of the we're here to help, entire length of the process. User trainings, we'll do all the trainings you need, the personal phone support, community events. When you think about course evaluations, we're actually doing a course evaluation conference this spring in Cleveland to actually focus on what institutions are doing and what they need from vendors and what they need to do to create the cultures they're looking for on campus. So really aiming at bringing folks together to have those conversations. And with that's really what I have to share with you. Unless you guys have further questions, or Jill, if you have anything you'd like me to spend a little more time on or whatever that might look like.
Thanks, Will.
How many institutions use your product?
Do you know that off the top of your head, Will?
Not for course evaluation. I can tell you that right now we have over 1,300 institutions that are using some piece of the Campus Labs puzzle. But I could get you a number for course evaluation itself.
How many did you say total? Just over 1,000?
1,300 total.
1,300. Yep.
For using some piece of the, not 1,300 using course eval, but 1,300 using some component of it.
And we do have several hundred using the course evaluation solution. I know Will mentioned earlier that we are that we support the IDEA Center Student Ratings of Instruction evaluation, and so just with that partnership, we support over 100 institutions that are administering the IDEA evaluation, and then there are probably about the same number that are running a homegrown instrument through our system.
Yeah, we have a few more questions here too.
Just
Perfect.
a question about more mechanics again. So right now, what we do is we have course evaluation open for courses that have 4 or more students. But then we've also got some courses that are cross-listed, where the number of actual students in the class is more than 4. But there's one class that's in that part of that cross-listed class where there's only 3 students, but we want to capture all of them. So is there mechanics in this software to accommodate that?
Yeah, there is. So with cross-listed courses, You know, let's say that you have, it's History 101 and Latin American Studies 101, and you have one kid in the History 101 and you have 4 students in the Latin American Studies. The way we run that is you would just identify whichever one is kind of the parent and then which one's the child. And then what would ultimately happen is the students who are enrolled in History 101 would see History 101 when they log in to do their eval. The students in Latin American Studies 101 would see Latin American Studies, but the report that would be generated would be a combined report. So you would be able to do that type of reporting. And that's just a matter of identifying in the files you're sending to us that it's a cross-listed course. And it could be more than 2. At Flagler, we had learning communities that were 4 courses, were all the same course with 12 credit hours, and you could sit there and have those cross-listings set up inside of the system.
Thank you.
I had a question about similar, but about team taught courses. We have nursing clinical courses where we might have 10 people listed in the course, and the 20 students in that course will get 10 course evaluations for the same course for each of the different 10 instructors. So is there a way, I guess 2 questions, can we take out, once you get the information of the course, take out certain people so they're not evaluated, because we really don't care about those people? And then the other question would be, even more preferable would be, oh, these 10 students can evaluate Jane Doe, these 10 students can evaluate John Smith. You know, can we change that once the information, because right now we're limited, we can't do that.
Yeah, no, you can do that. You can have team taught courses where you have 2 instructors listed and they both get fully evaluated. Or, like I said, if it comes from Banner in one way, we can always manually add or remove faculty and staff as needed, or students. So we can make sure that, like your example of these 10 students get this one, these 10 students get another, we can control for that either through the data upload, or once we get it from Banner, we can manually make that work.
Thank you.
I was just wondering if our support representatives will be the same as far as like Sophia being our point person for tech support help desk, and then Paul being our other person, or if it's a whole different group.
Who did you say the main contact is? I heard Paul.
Paul Jacobson Miller.
Jacobson, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then,
I would have to check and make sure on Paul. It just depends on whether Paul has the course eval training piece or is getting it.
Typically, you would also have a course evaluation specialist, particularly through the implementation part, somebody that's has more intimate familiarity with the course evaluations, at least kind of hand-holding through the initial setup and implementation, and then beyond that, it may continue with Paul, or it may be Paul and the course evaluation specialist working together.
I think that was it.
Okay,
well,
great.
Awesome.
Well, as we know typically happens a lot of
feel free.
times, you leave the room and then you think of the question you should have asked. And so feel free, Crystal, of course, has my contact information. You can get that from her, or you can just email her directly with questions and she can forward them on to me and I will get back to you on anything that lingers. And of course, I'll be checking in with her in a couple of days or early next week just to make sure we've caught all the questions. Again, I know you're looking at a couple of other potential partners, and so there may be some questions that arise after you see their tools as well, things that we maybe forgot to mention today. So I hope you will, reach out to with any questions, or to see if we do something that, again, we might not have covered today. I think we covered it.
Great. Thank you all so much.
All right. Have a great afternoon.
Thank
Thanks
you as
again.
well.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.